John F. Kennedy was not supposed to be in that elevator alone that night, but when those doors opened and he saw what she was carrying, he made a decision that nobody in the White House ever found out about Walter Reed Army Medical Center, Washington, District of Columbia, November 8, 1961. 11:42 at night, the hallways on the 4th floor were the kind of quiet that only exists in hospitals after visiting. Hours end, not peaceful quiet, but the quiet of a building that has learned to hold too much at once and has stopped announcing it. The fluorescent lights above the corridor ran in long, pale strips and made everything look slightly more tired than it actually was. A janitor was pushing a cart near the far end of the hall. A duty nurse sat behind the station desk with her head down over a chart. The elevator at the south end of the building had been out of service since Tuesday, which meant the one working elevator was the narrow one near the stairwell, the one with the brass handle that stuck if you pulled it wrong, and the floor indicator needle that always pointed to 3 regardless of where you actually were. The man standing inside that elevator was 44 years old. He had been the 35th President of the United States for 10 months and 3 days. He was not in a motorcade. He was not in a suit. He was wearing a dark wool overcoat over a pale blue dress shirt, no tie, the collar open at the throat. His back had been hurting since October, in the particular way it always hurt when he had been sitting too long in ceremonial chairs, and he had come to Walter Reed that evening through a side entrance with one aide and no press, and had told the aide to wait in the car. He had seen Dr. Hans Cross on the 2nd floor for 40 minutes. He had taken the stairs up to the 4th floor afterward because the stairwell was empty, and he had wanted 2 minutes of nothing before the car ride back. He had not found the 2 minutes. He had found instead a conversation with a night orderly named Gerald, who had served in the United States Army in Korea, and who had recognized him immediately and had stood very straight and had called him sir 7 times in 4 sentences. Kennedy had asked Gerald his unit, and Gerald had told him, and Kennedy had asked one more question and listened to the full answer and shaken Gerald's hand and meant it. Then he had walked to the elevator and pressed the button and stood waiting with his hands in his coat pockets. The elevator doors opened at 11:42. She was already inside. Her name was Margaret Elaine Dowell. She was 29 years old, a registered nurse on the 4th floor of Walter Reed, originally from Roanoke, Virginia. The second of 4 children, raised by a schoolteacher mother and a father who had worked 31 years at a furniture plant before the plant closed in 1957. She had graduated from the Medical College of Virginia nursing program in 1955 and had come to Walter Reed the following year on a federal appointment that had taken her 14 months to secure. She was 5 feet 4 inches tall, and she had the posture of a woman who had been told since childhood to stand up straight and had decided at some point to do it for herself instead of for whoever was telling her. She was wearing her uniform. She was carrying flowers. They were not expensive flowers. They were a small bunch of yellow chrysanthemums wrapped in green paper, the kind sold from a bucket near the front entrance of the hospital for 75 cents. She had bought them herself 40 minutes earlier on her way back from her break. She had bought them for a patient in room 412. His name was Corporal Dennis Arthur Pulaski. He was 26 years old. He had been at Walter Reed for 11 weeks following a training accident at Fort Bragg, North Carolina, that had taken fingers from his left hand and the hearing in his left ear, and had left a long scar running from his jaw to his collarbone. He had no family within 400 miles. His mother was in Youngstown, Ohio, and could not afford the bus fare. In 11 weeks, he had received 0 visitors. Margaret had looked at his chart on her first day covering his room and had seen the visitor log completely blank. 11 weeks of blank, and had not been able to stop thinking about it. She had started stopping by his room at the end of her shift when she could. She brought him things: a paperback novel, a pack of cards, Once, a slice of pound cake wrapped in wax paper from a bakery 2 blocks from her apartment. Tonight, she had bought the chrysanthemums because he had mentioned in a conversation 2 weeks earlier that she had remembered, and he had probably forgotten, that his grandmother had kept yellow flowers on her kitchen table every single week of his entire childhood without. She had not told her supervisor about the visits. She had not told anyone. She did it because it needed doing, and because she was the person who had noticed it needed doing, and in her experience, those 2 facts together were sufficient reason. She stepped into the elevator and saw him and stopped. He stepped into the elevator and saw her and pressed the button for the lobby. The doors closed. For approximately 4 seconds, neither of them said anything. The elevator moved. The floor indicator needle pointed to 3. He looked at the flowers. He looked at her face. He had spent 10 months reading rooms for a living, reading the specific combination of exhaustion and purpose that appears on the face of a person doing something difficult because they have decided it is the right thing to do, and he recognized it now without needing to ask why it was there. "What floor?" he said. "4," she said. "I am going back up. I work up there. I just needed to ride down for a minute." She paused. She was looking at the flowers. "I do not usually take the elevator just to think. That probably sounds strange." "It does not sound strange at all," he said. She looked at him then, really looked. The elevator was small, and the light inside it was the same, flat fluorescent as the hallway, and there was nowhere else to look. She saw the whoopin' coat. She saw his face. She said his name. Not Mr. President, his name. She said it the way a person says a name when they are verifying something they were not expecting to need to verify. He nodded once. She looked back at the flowers. "Who are those for?" he said. She told him about Corporal Pulaski. She told him about the 11 weeks, and the visitor log, and the grandmother's kitchen table. She did not tell it dramatically. She told it the way she would have told it to a colleague in the break room, matter of fact, a little tired. The way you tell a story that you have been carrying around inside you for long enough that the weight of it has become ordinary. She told him about the pound cake. She told him about the cards. She said she was not sure he even liked chrysanthemums, but that yellow seemed like the right color for a room that had been gray for 11 weeks. The elevator reached the lobby. The doors opened. Neither of them moved. He reached into the inside pocket of his wool coat. He took out a small card. It was a personal card, not a White House card, the kind with nothing on it but his name in plain type and a phone number. He held it out to her. "You give that to Corporal Pulaski," he said. "You tell him to call that number on Friday morning between 9 and 10. You tell him the President of the United States would like to speak with him for 10 minutes. Not about anything important, just to talk." Margaret looked at the card. "He will think I am making it up," she said. "Tell him to call anyway," Kennedy said. "People who have been alone for 11 weeks deserve to have something happen that they did not expect." She took the card. He pressed the button for the lobby again, even though the doors were already open, the small unconscious gesture of a man whose hands are always doing something. Then he looked at her directly. "What you are doing for that young man," he said, "is not a small thing. I want you to know that I know the difference between a small thing and a thing that holds a person together when nothing else is. What you are carrying up to that room tonight is the second kind." The doors began to close. He stepped out into the lobby. She rode back up to the 4th floor alone with the chrysanthemums in her hands and the card in her uniform pocket. Corporal Dennis Arthur Pulaski called the number on Friday morning at 9:07. The call lasted 14 minutes. He would later tell Margaret, in a voice that had difficulty staying even, that the president had asked him about Youngstown and about Fort Bragg and about what he planned to do when he got out, and had listened to every answer the way a man listens when he actually wants to know. He had not once mentioned the accident. He had not once mentioned the hand or the ear or the scar. He had talked to him like a man talking to another man on a Friday morning with nothing else more important to do. Margaret Elaine Dowell worked at Walter Reed Army Medical Center until 1974. In her 13 years on the 4th floor, she brought flowers to patients who had no visitors a total of 219 times by her own count, kept in a small notebook she started the week after the elevator. She never told anyone about that night until 1988, when she mentioned it once to her youngest daughter during a long drive from Roanoke to Richmond. Her daughter asked her why she had never told anyone. Margaret thought about it for a mile or two of Virginia interstate, and then said that it had felt like something that belonged to the people who were in the elevator, and that she had not wanted to make it into a story before she understood what it actually was. Dennis Pulaski was discharged from Walter Reed in March of 1962. He went back to Youngstown. He worked for 22 years as a machinist. He kept the card in a cedar box on his dresser until the day he died in 2003. His daughter found it during the sorting and did not know what it was for a long time. When she finally found out, she had it framed. It hangs in her kitchen in Youngstown, Ohio, next to a window that gets good morning light, above a small vase where she keeps yellow flowers every single week without exception. If this story reached something in you about the kind of man who stops in a moving elevator and decides that a stranger carrying flowers to a forgotten soldier deserves to be seen, take a moment to subscribe and share it with someone who still believes that the most important thing a powerful person can do is notice what everyone else has walked past. Tap that thumbs up for more untold stories about the human being behind the history. Tell us in the comments, who was the person in your life who saw you when nobody else did? Ring the bell so the next story finds you when it is ready.